Carol Ann Barrett was an 18-year-old girl living with her parents and her siblings in Janesville, Ohio. Carol, a senior at Zanesville High School, had an adventurous spirit that inspired her and her friends to travel south to Daytona Beach, Florida for a spring break. Carol had worked at the Wendy's, old-fashioned hamburgers, in Zanesville to save up money for the trip. In March 1980, Carol and her friends were staying at the Daytona Beach Hotel. Carol and the other female friends were staying on the 6th floor of the hotel, while the 3 male friends were staying on the 5th floor. But on the night of March 23, 1980, all of the friends were in the girls' room partying. At around 2 a.m., Carol and a friend named Scott Grubb decided to head to a nearby store. But as they were making their way towards the elevator, a man carrying a gun confronted them and asked them to take him into their room. Steve, concerned about the man's intentions, told him they could not get back in because they did not have the key. The man ignored this and pushed Steve towards the door. Frightened, Steve and Carol knocked until one of the friends led them in. The man then told the 8 friends to get naked, then robbed them, and threatened that if they tried anything, he would kill one of them. The man then said he was going to take one of them to make sure they wouldn't call the police after he left. He picked Carol's friend Pam to take with him. When Pam started to panic, he became agitated and Carol volunteered to go instead. Carol was known for being level-headed and calm under pressure, and she did not offer any resistance. When the intruder told her that she was now his hostage, the man told them that he would release Carol. Within an hour, he made everyone else get into the balcony and locked them out before taking Carol out of the room. One of the boys eventually managed to reach a neighboring balcony and asked the occupants to call the police. Carol's friends provided the police with detailed description of the abductor. They described him being between 20 and 25 years old, about 5 feet 10 inches tall and about 160 pounds in weight. He was wearing a brown suede jacket, tan pants, brown suede shoes, gold wire rim glasses with brown tinted glasses, and a mole on his left cheek. A composite sketch of the suspect was released in the media, but no leads were found. The following day, Carol's body was discovered by a passerby in a ditch line along Interstate 95 near Pecan Park Road in Jacksonville. Carol had been dragged from the roadway and discarded into the ditch sometime after midnight. She had been executed with a small caliber handgun, and there was no sign of a struggle. She was discovered nude from the waist up, with a white sweater pulled over her head. She was wearing a gold necklace and earrings. Her body was positively identified by her friends. Carol's friends and family were devastated by the news. For a long time, the family received prank calls, calling the family and saying, "You're next," and then hanging up, without any leads or suspects. The case would eventually go cold. In August of 2017, Carol's case was revisited and ultimately reopened by the members of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office Cold Case Unit after reviewing all available evidence. In 2020, a convicted serial killer was identified as a suspect in Carol's murder. 65-year-old Billy Mansfield Jr. was named as a suspect. He would have been 24 at the time of Barrett's murder. Through multiple interviews spanning 2 years, police say that in 2022, Mansfield admitted to being the suspect in the police sketch done after the abduction, and eventually confessed to the crime itself. Despite the confession, authorities decided against pursuing prosecution against Mansfield, who was already serving a life sentence in California for murder, as well as 4 concurrent life sentences in Florida. Prison records show Mansfield committed his first murder in 1973. His last murder was in April 1980. 1 month after Barrett's murder, he was convicted of murdering 5 women in California. And Florida, he was sentenced to life in prison in 1982. During the initial investigation, cops found that he had buried 4 bodies in the backyard office, Florida home, before traveling to California, killing the 5th victim and being arrested. Billy Mansfield continues to cooperate with detectives in other jurisdictions regarding additional cold cases. On July 16, 1991, remains of a woman were found near downtown Ventura, about 70 miles northwest of Los Angeles. The woman was later identified as 42-year-old Danielle Clause. Danielle had been found partially clothed and had been sexually assaulted. She was ultimately bludgeoned to death with a rock. A rock covered with blood was found near her body and was believed to be the murder weapon. Danielle was last seen on the previous night, on the night of July 15, 1991. She was speaking to a man driving a small, white pickup truck with pinstripes. She was reported missing by her husband the next day, after she failed to return that night. Police collected evidence found at the crime scene, which included fingerprints, cigarette butts, trash papers, rocks, and anything else that looked disturbed. Police also canvassed the area, looking for a white truck that matched the suspect vehicle description. In interviews at the time with friends and family, Danielle was remembered as a sensitive artist who had struggled with drug addiction and was helping others with addiction issues at an adult school in town. Despite evidence found at the crime scene, no leads were found, and the case would eventually grow cold. Danielle's 1,000-page case file and DNA evidence from sexual assault kit and the rock found at the crime scene sat dormant at a Ventura police station for 25 years. Over the years, the DNA sample from the case was entered into CODAs. However, no matches were found. In 2021, the new investigator on the case learned that the murder weapon, a rock and fingernail clippings from Danielle, had been preserved but had not been tested ever. He then requested that the evidence be tested to compare DNA and the rock and the fingernail strippings to the DNA from the sexual assault kit. The officer said, "This test would either confirm or deny that our murder suspect and the suspect were one and the same." By September 2021, all the DNA came back as a match to one unknown suspect. This led to the next step of testing the evidence, using the new technology of forensic genetic genealogy. Using genetic genealogy, forensic specialists were able to develop a family tree of the suspect. They were able to find a living family member of the suspect who had an interest in family genealogy. She had already built a family tree herself. Investigators went to connect with her in San Diego, where she gave them a breakdown of her family tree and a DNA sample. Through her DNA sample analysis, they were able to learn that she was the first cousin, match eventually leading them to 2 brothers, who were possibly matches for their suspect. A sample given by one of the brothers eliminated him. which positively identified the other brother, Larry Devon Welsh, as the killer. It was found that Welsh owned a white Ford Ranger, had a P.O. box in Ventura the year Danielle died. He was also seen with her around the time, and was seen by another witness in the area where her body was found. There was no known connection between Welsh and Danielle. However, Welsh will not face justice as he died in 1999. Danielle's family is grateful that they finally have some closure after 33 long years of not knowing what happened to Danielle. Danielle's sister Marcy Fort said, "My sister was so much more than a victim of a brutal murder. She was an artist, a daughter, a sister, a mother, and a wife. She was a good person with a mighty soul, and she was taken way too young. I didn't really believe that. The police were going to solve this, because there are other crimes being committed. All the time I am so grateful that I lived to see at least a meter of justice, and that they found out who did this." On February 7, 1977, around 11:21 p.m., a woman contacted the Colorado Springs Police Department to report a possible murder in the 5400 block of North Nevada Avenue, Colorado Springs. When the police arrived, they discovered 14-year-old Maria Loraine Honzell had been stabbed to death. Maria had been babysitting for a female neighbor in the same apartment complex. The neighbor came home around 11:20 p.m. and found Maria deceased in the master bedroom. The neighbor's children, aged 6 and 8, were present during the attack but were unharmed. They were asleep in the bed when the neighbor returned and found Maria. An autopsy revealed Maria had been stabbed multiple times in the chest and one prominent stab wound on the neck area. Her death was ruled a homicide, but a motive could not be determined. The Colorado Springs Police Department conducted a thorough investigation, which included numerous interviews, reports, and a collection of evidence. At the time, a suspect had not been identified. However, CSPD did not cease to follow leads and pursue other investigative strategies. As DNA technology advanced, several pieces of evidence were sent to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. For further analysis, a male DNA profile was identified from a blood stain on Maria Honzell's clothing, but no matches were found, despite testing samples from various potential suspects and entering the DNA profile in the combined DNA index system. The case would soon grow cold. In 2019, the male DNA profile was compared with the samples in public genetic genealogy database with assistance from Paraborn Nano Labs in the hopes of identifying a biological relative of the unknown suspect. Through extensive research, a person of interest was identified as William Charles Conan Jr., who also went by Bill Cannon. Carnan died in 2010. Police were unable to collect his DNA since he had been cremated and had no living relatives. Carnan was identified as a student at a local college and an acquaintance of the woman that Maria Honzell had been babysitting for. On the night of her murder, the investigation revealed Carnan had been to the apartment complex on prior occasions. However, after the review of the case by the 4th Judicial DA's office, including the genetic genealogy research, the DAS office said it is confident that Carnan is the person responsible. For Maria's murder, the case was closed after 47 years.